What if I told you that a key to ending global conflict is found in the forest? That's right, the forest. Not in a military facility, not in politics or power plays, but nature. Growing up in a country surrounded by constant conflict and political unrest, I made a decision at a young age that I would dedicate my life to ending conflict. And I was obsessed by understanding the nature of conflict, the people affected by it. When others were studying abroad, I was visiting places like Bosnia, Serbia, Vietnam, Northern Ireland, Cuba, on a mission to change the world. But I crashed hard. Maybe I saw too much too young. I'm talking about the aftermath of war, the environmental devastation from relentless bombing and destruction, orphan children begging in the streets, soldiers unable to reintegrate into society, and the countless of displaced families, like my own in Venezuela, forced to leave everything behind to start over. Again and again, I saw conflict resolution efforts arriving way too late. Well after the big guns were drawn and lives had been lost. I began to ask the question, how can these conflicts be prevented in the first place? And as a classic overthinker, I dove deep into academia. But after double majors in international relations, economics, followed by a master's degree in nuclear disarmament and international conflict resolution, I felt helpless. Even with top secret clearances and a career in intelligence, analyzing conflicts at the highest levels, I couldn't see a path forward. I dropped out of the security world entirely. Instead of continuing to Langley like many of my peers, I moved to California. And I was certain my world-changing ambitions were over. But then I met someone who I would have never met in a million years in a secured government facility. A wisdom keeper, an elder, Abuela Malinali, a fierce grandmother on a mission to remind the world that nature is one of the most powerful tools for human connection. She introduced me to an ancient practice shared by many cultures around the world, a journey to open the heart, calm the mind, and ground deeply into the body, better described as a forest immersion. And that's when much of what I thought I knew about peacebuilding and diplomacy began to be challenged, because I realized that peace could be built from the ground up, or rather from the forest floor. I will never forget my first night during my first immersion, the ease in which I fell asleep inside my one possession, a sleeping bag, amongst the trees, perfectly in sync with the sunset. The forest became my home, the trees, my family, and for 4 days and 4 nights, I've thrived on fresh air and warm light from the sun. My body suddenly remembered the environment that it belonged to. Not my cozy home or nice office, but nature. I also learned that a forest immersion is not a walk in the park. It's a guided, courageous journey of 1 or more nights, remaining in one place, facing what most of us try to avoid: our fears. Fears of solitude, boredom, withdrawal from stimuli, and the underworld of our own minds. As I prepared for my first immersion, Abuela told me there will be no substances, no enhancements. This is you fully present with nature. She said, everyone's experience is different, but you will get to untangle mental knots until you finally surrender to the present moment. And that's when the magic of awe and wonder can begin. And that's when the magic of awe and wonder did begin, and I discovered a crucial key for peace and reconciliation. It's what I now call nature diplomacy. A peace-building approach rooted in nature, a framework of 4 pillars that can not only help us build the foundation for peace, but enables us to take back our power as change makers. And this is what I want to share with you today. Pillar number 1, a grounded presence. A big driver of conflict is emotional overload and reactivity. But in a forest immersion, you develop a clear mind, a grounded emotional state that allows you to make clear decisions. In fact, you become hyper-aware, as if you have superpowers. During my first immersion, I could hear the wings of a small bird cutting through the air. I could see colors in the nights. And like the trees, I learned that it was okay to take up space. And I learned that conflict and war stems from humanity's disconnection from our own source of inspiration and inner power, our own source of agency and resilience. People don't just come out of the forest free from despair. They come out grounded, anchored in their own power with a clear sense of direction. Pillar number 2, awe and reverence. Apathy is a quiet driver of conflict. Because when we shut down from the world, we begin to normalize and accept the unacceptable. But a forest immersion will take you to uninhibited states of gratitude because you're connecting to the sacredness of life. Many say it's like seeing the beauty of the world for the very first time. I saw the dance between the wind and the seed, sun and leaf. I saw how everything is interconnected, and that we cannot create peace without first reconnecting to the part of us that wants to belong, to contribute, to matter. This takes me to pillar number 3, activated compassion. A major turning point in any conflict is when parties are able to see the human behind the other person. In a forest immersion, there comes a point where empathy and a call to serve something greater than yourself comes online. And in the process, you understand that without self-compassion and self-acceptance, it becomes nearly impossible to foster healthy relationships, care for the planet, and take responsibility for humanity's well-being. I understood that the world state of affairs was never something I or even a single group could face alone. And from that moment, I was hooked. For 4 consecutive years, I ventured out into the redwood forest of California, spending 4 days and 4 nights at a time, fully immersed in the wild. I stayed in an area of my choosing. I left behind all modern comforts and distractions, no food, no shelter. I simply remained there, completely sober, alone with my thoughts, the towering trees, the stillness of nature, disconnected from communication, stimulation, and the countless distractions of the civilized world. Now, you may be wondering, what does sitting in the forest have to do with peace and diplomacy on a global scale? And that takes me to pillar number 4, true belonging. Because peace is not created by policy alone. It comes down to real human connection, and relationships matter. When division drives us apart, belonging is the antidote. Authoritarian regimes know all too well that one of the first things to suppress is the right to assemble. Why? Because when we gather, we share ideas, we inspire one another, and we build alliances. Yet in the field of peace building, we rarely consider how and where we gather. A forest immersion is not done alone. It is held by both nature and a community. The elders who trained me knew that true belonging comes alive when people gather, heal, and commit to one another. Abuela Malinali is no longer with us, but her legacy lives on. Over the past 10 years, through doing my own immersions and supporting others, I've seen how people create bonds. People from very different backgrounds create bonds that last long after they leave the forest. Something ancient is remembered, and that's a feeling worth spreading. So why should we care? Why should we care about forest immersion or nature diplomacy? Too many parts of the world today are riddled with conflict, much of it driven by people operating from fear and overwhelm. When we are in survival mode, our brain's amygdala hijacks our ability to think clearly and rationally, overriding parts of our brain responsible for creativity, compassion, and problem solving. In this state, we become vulnerable to deceptive media and propaganda, which amplifies more fear and confusion. War, it's rooted in fear. Violence and control are acts of fear. Global conflicts often show up in the news as war and violence. But we could argue that these large-scale conflicts are a reflection of the struggles within our own minds that impact our relationships, shape our communities, and ultimately ripple out into the world. We can't keep waiting for things to explode. We've got to actively cultivate the conditions for peace to thrive at all levels of society. And this is why I want to redefine diplomacy to include the 4 pillars, whether it is us, the people, or dignitaries making decisions. And forest immersion is a powerful tool because it creates the ideal conditions for trust, collaboration, and meaningful dialogue, whether it is to support a reconciliation plan or to prevent conflict in the first place. What happens when we create experiences that induce a grounded presence, awaken awe and reverence, activate compassion, and promote true belonging? When people are in this state, clear, open, connected, what becomes possible is extraordinary, and it is something that traditional peace-building frameworks rarely can achieve. History can attest to that. Now, am I here to persuade world leaders to trade their boardrooms for pine trees and bird calls? One can dream that someday peace talks may happen under dedicated spaces under the influence of nature. Let's not forget that peace deals have already been made in green, forested areas like Camp David, right here in the United States, between Egypt and Israel. But we can now leverage what we know about the mind and our connection to nature. That's the difference. In peace begins with us. That's building peace from the ground up. The revolutionary movements of tomorrow, of the future, don't have to look like this. People take to the streets, violence, and chaos. But they could look like this instead. People taken to nature for healing and building bridges. And the future is now. We are the ones we've been waiting for. My vision is to train leaders to bring forest immersion to their communities, to empower others to become agents of peace. Imagine, this looks like Activists entering the forest not to escape, but to develop empathy before turning to extreme ideologies. This looks like people in the defense and security fields having spaces to process some of the experiences they face. Something I wish I had. This looks like bringing the children of two peoples, like Palestinians and Israelis, to share time in the forest. No sides, no debates, just stillness. The possibilities are endless. And only by stepping out of the world systems can we discover a new path. As Einstein said, we cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it. To truly promote peace, we cannot stay in the same fearful state of mind that fuels conflict. Looking back at my younger self, I wasn't naive to believe in peace, but I was wrong to think that it had to be handed down by those in power. True peace becomes possible for all of us when connecting to our power source, nature, and embodying the 4 pillars of nature diplomacy. I can already see a future where we care for and protect one another, where compassion replaces fear and connection replaces our need to control. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but we can start. And it's up to each one of us. We can start by planting the seeds, or rather, by planting ourselves in the forest. We may discover that before trying to save the world or even the environment, maybe, just maybe, we could allow the natural world to save us. Thank you.